month, Sonya Massey was killed
that's
in her
terrible.
home by Sean Grayson, a Sangamon County Sheriff deputy. Last week, we sat down with Sheriff Campbell, and he said that he does not shoulder any responsibility when it comes to hiring Sean Grayson. Do you agree with that perspective?
I don't know the details, but I'm going to learn the details. I'll tell you this. This was a heartbreaking tragedy. To watch that video is as heartbreaking as watching George Floyd lose his life on the curbside of the Twin Cities. I grieve for this poor woman who was suffering from mental illness, needed a helping hand, and instead she invited the sheriff's office into her home to protect her and her family and ended up giving her life. I want to salute the prosecutor, the local state's attorney, for his timely response in finding serious charges and moving on them very, very quickly. I think it showed that he appreciated the seriousness of the situation. But there's more to be determined. This last week, Cory Booker, who's a senator from New Jersey, reintroduced a bill called the George Floyd Bill, which would establish a registry for police and law enforcement, so there'd be no surprises when you hire somebody as to what their background might be and what wrongdoing might be in that background. I'm an original co-sponsor of that bill. So I'm going to look into this, continue to look into this.
Senator, in deciding not to seek re-election, President Biden talked about passing the torch. Obviously, you have a re-election coming up in 2 years. Do you plan to seek re-election?
Well, I have not made a final decision on that, and I'll let you know when to do.
Senator, there seems to be a growing movement among some of the Harris campaign and national Democrats to get Republicans on board with Kamala Harris, like Jim Edgar, Adam Kinzinger. They're all part of this effort, Joe Walsh. How important is it to pull Republicans away from the GOP platform in order to be successful?
I think it's helpful. I think it's very helpful. There are many Republicans, and many of them voted in the primary against Donald Trump, who don't believe he's the future of their party or should be. They believe instead that there should be different leadership from the MAGA leaders of Donald Trump. And when they express that publicly, it strengthens Kamala Harris.
Senator, if I could, I'm sorry, were you finished? Were you finished
Yes.
with that response? Okay.
Yes.
If I could bring it back to the vice presidency, what makes a good vice president?
Someone who's a heartbeat away from the presidency, who people look at and say that's a credible leader in times of emergency in the United States.
Doesn't sound like a step up if you're the governor of a big state like Illinois or Pennsylvania.
Well, it depends on your point of view. To be asked to run for vice president and to be that close to the highest political power in our nation for at least 4 years is a rare opportunity.
Impact on Illinois if we have a vice president, JB?
Well, I think he has shown as governor that he's a real leader, and he would be a good ally of Kamala Harris. And I happen to know Juliana Stratton, the lieutenant governor, very well. She is a very impressive person, and she would take over the governorship if necessary.
Senator, over the past couple of days, we saw the prisoner swap between Paul Whelan and another Wall Street journalist was brought home, but there was also an exchange of Russian criminals for that. A lot of Republicans have criticized that swap for American civilians for Russian criminals. Do you agree with that perspective? What's your take?
I think we did the right thing. I'm sorry that anyone was taken prisoner illegally, and that happened over and over again, but it's become part of a strategy. Vladimir Putin, a thug and a war criminal who invaded Ukraine and God knows where else, is going to use every single tactic he can think of to put pressure on the United States. In this situation, he wanted a convicted assassin as part of the exchange. I'm sorry we had to give that, but that was the only way to bring the Americans home, and I agree with that as a strategy.
Senator, what are your thoughts on the Secretary of Defense revoking the plea agreement in the 9/11 case?
Well, it's rare that I publicly disagree with him because I think Secretary Austin's doing a great job. But the prisoners remaining in Guantanamo have been there for over 20 years. There has been no successful effort by any military commission to prosecute those who have been accused of terrorism. What happened on 9/11, of course, is horrendous. But the bottom line is a military commission is not going to end up with a death penalty. It's just not going to happen. And I think this idea of moving for a life sentence was a good compromise. I'm sorry that Secretary Austin disagreed.
Don't miss a video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel today for more Central Illinois news.